Hi, good morning, everyone. It's Cheryl from Property Development Australia, and I'd like to say hi to everyone for a very special edition of. It's not really the business of property, really. This is a special event that we're holding to introduce who we'd like to be our our charity and community organization to support, which is Habitat for Humanity. And I have Dan Peyton, who is the head of impact and engagement here, who will join us very, very soon. But I want to obviously reach out the reason why we're having this session. And for anyone that's on either Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, if you're here and tuning in, please drop me a hello. This is to basically it's a call out to our community of property investors, developers. It's just to our wider community. As you all know, the flooding in Queensland and northern New South Wales, and New South Wales in general as well. It's got a bit of a smashing, and a lot of communities have suffered quite a lot from this. And I put a post out about 2 weeks ago saying, what can we do? And Habitat for Humanity are one of these organizations that are not only helping towards the disaster relief, but also mobilizing volunteers, groups of volunteers, to be actually going out to these places and helping with the cleanup, and mainly the cleanup and so on. But we'll find out a little bit more from Dan. So without further ado, I'll invite Dan to join me on stage today.
Hi, Cheryl. How you going?
Hello. Good morning, Dan. So, Dan, please tell us a little bit about Habitat for Humanity so we can get a sense of who you guys are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, sure. Will do. So Habitat for Humanity started in the mid-'70s in the US, down in Georgia, actually. And since then, we've grown to be present in over 70 countries all around the world. In Australia, we've been around for just over 30 years, and we're operating in most states in Australia, doing various things. But yeah, so we've been around for a while. If anyone's from the US, you would probably know who we are. Yeah.
Fantastic. And so what's the core mission of Habitat?
So we're all about shelter, empowering communities through shelter. So very much working with communities, whether they're overseas or in Australia, to build on their strengths so that they're in safe, decent shelter. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where I think there's such great sort of alignment, because we're a property community and we empower people to build homes. And I see here where we're okay. Obviously, a lot of people are doing it from a profit perspective. But there's so many of us that do this and go, I want to be able to give back, and this is an opportunity to do so. So tell us a little bit about the types of ways that you guys are. How do you guys do things at Habitat? What are the different ways you can contribute?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of our work is overseas and mostly throughout the Asia Pacific region. So the core countries that we support over there are Vietnam, Cambodia, Fiji, Indonesia, and Nepal. So prior to COVID, we were actually sending about 600 to 800 volunteers overseas every year. So this was called our Global Village program. And so these volunteers, they'd arrive on the Monday, they'd be standing there, they'd meet the family that they're building for. And then by the Friday, lunchtime on Friday, you'd be standing inside a house with this family that moves in. So you can imagine like the life-changing impact that has on that family for generations. So overseas, we also,
I need a team of volunteers for my projects because they're taking 12 months. So can we get a team of volunteers? So I mean, like, how do these houses look, and what are they made out of?
Yeah, so we use materials that are locally sourced in the community. So it's really building according to what's standard. So they're mostly brick homes. We do some bamboo homes in Cambodia, so they can actually go up even quicker. Yes. They're usually pretty simple dwellings, so a one-room house with a flushable toilet and a lockable door. Yeah. So they're very simple compared to sort of our privileged dwellings here, but yeah, when these families are coming out of slums or they're in, a tin shack with mud floors and a leaky roof, like it's a huge upgrade for them. And, for many of them, prior to us building and the volunteers building with them, they're spending what little they earn on making repairs to their homes. So it saves them those funds as well.
Yeah. And are you, who are you building for? Is that people that have been affected by natural disasters, or are you sort of locating areas that it is a slum area and you're wanting to improve the livability of their homes?
Yeah, it really differs, really. So we partner with local organisations, whether it's government or council sort of thing. And so we work with them to identify those who are most in need. So it is disaster-prone areas. So Cambodia, for example, where there's a lot of flooding and monsoon season, the homes are built up on stilts. And then in the mountains of Nepal, where it's prone to earthquakes, we build to a certain standard so they are, they can withstand those disasters, which will happen at some point.
Yeah. So we'll touch a little bit on sort of those volunteer efforts for overseas. So you've got volunteering, you've got disaster relief in terms of funds as well. Are those the two main types of ways that people contribute to what it is that you do?
For our overseas work, so only 5% of the homes that are built overseas are through volunteers. So the other 95% are actually funded through donations. So whether it's regular donations or one-off donations from individuals or corporates or even schools in Australia. Yeah. There are other programs. So we have a really large water, sanitation and hygiene program in Fiji, which looks to sort of bring balance to the gender gap in terms of access to water. That's called Water for Women. So yeah, it's pretty varied. Shelter is at the centre always, but there's kind of secondary projects that we run as well.
So let's bring it back home to what it is that you guys do in Australia. Obviously, we want to talk about the floods and things. What are the initiatives that you guys have?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so through a combination of, I guess, COVID and then the bushfires in 2019, 2020, we've really scaled up our work in Australia. We've always done repairs and maintenance on crisis accommodation, like for victims of domestic violence. So we've got corporate teams mostly who go in and do those repairs and maintenance, a lot of painting to make these dwellings a lot more comfortable for women and children escaping domestic violence. And then the bushfires for us, we received quite a decent amount of funding from state and federal governments to roll out volunteer activities to help people recover from the bushfires. So where there's other organisations who help with the immediate response, the recovery period, as you might know, is so long term. We're still helping families now who are living in tents. They're sleeping on couches. They're in like demountable homes sometimes, because the cost to rebuild on your property after you've lost your home in a fire is far higher, because you have to build to a higher standard. So it's really just difficult. So we go in and we help these families. A volunteer team can basically move the needle 2 months in just one day, because it's rare that it's only the fires that have affected them. It's, there might be disability. Obviously, COVID came in straight after, which shifted media attention and donations. And so, they might have lost their job through COVID and there's disability, or they're very elderly. So the work's ongoing. We've been in there for a few years now, and there's kind of no end in sight.
So tell me, on a practical sense, what sort of help is it that volunteers or Habitat actually provide?
Yeah, so it is manual labour. So no skills are required. It's really just having a group of people there for between 9 and 4 in the afternoon. Where we've had a partner family refer to us as like a mini tornado. We just sort of come in and we'll basically do whatever is most useful to those property owners. There's a lot of kind of landscaping work. It could be clearing debris. It could be setting down pavers. It could be removing vegetation that's grown because of the fires, creating, fire breaks for future disasters to lower the risk that they'll be affected again. But it's manual labour. But, we do find it's quite physical work that really anyone can do, but the psychological impact of having a group of people there is just as powerful. So many of these people say that they feel that they were forgotten, and no one's there to help them. So to have 10 strangers in there in their sort of bright blue habitat shirts and helping out, it really helps them mentally as well.
Yeah, and it does concern me when you're saying, obviously it's 2 years post sort of, early 2020, and like you said, COVID happened, and all of a sudden everyone went, "Whoa, what happened?" Bushfires, they're all gone, and this is the thing, we don't want that to happen with the floods as well, because obviously no one's really talking about it, even sort of 2 weeks after. The devastation still sits there. So I'd like to share a little bit of, from your experience, like the families now. I mean, are people really still living in tents, or, like you said, demountables, and what are the options for them? Are they looking to build again, or do they just have no funds to build?
It's a bit of both. Look, most did have insurance. However, as I said, the standards to rebuild on that property are far higher, so insurance rarely covers all of it. Their options really, like, you can understand, because most of them are elderly, so they've lived on their properties for 30, 40 years, so they don't want to leave. Some do, obviously, but their options really are to slowly just, work on their property. That's why when we come in and we can move, move their situation forward by a few months, is so impactful. But
okay. So let's talk about the floods and what you guys are planning to do there, because you mentioned that there's almost like 2 stages, where there's the immediate flood and rescue and things like that. So who gets involved there in that immediate stage?
So there's organisations like the Red Cross. I think we've all seen images of the Army going in to help, and then just local community volunteers or people travelling quite a long distance, but more informally, I guess. Just so we're sort of coming in. We're actually just waiting now for permission to be able to organise teams. Which hopefully will come through in sort of 2 to 3 weeks. We'll be able to begin, but essentially the work we'll be doing, because the damage was so large, the work we'll be doing is similar to what those early responders were doing, clearing debris, filling skip bins. It's really just listening to the property owners, what's going to be most useful for them for a day, for 10 of us to do day by day. But we expect we'll be doing flood recovery for, years, like we have been for the bushfires. Yeah,
and that in itself really astounds me, because then you sort of think, wow, that you just go in and just clean up and it's all good, and you say, hi, thanks for, thanks for having us. But it's years. There's still stuff that needs to be done, and support given.
Yeah, so we we very much, whether it's overseas or here in Australia, we very much work with the community. So we have staff who are based there. We listen and we talk to the community about what their needs are. So with the fires, for example, so yes, we're probably coming towards the end of that recovery stage, but we're moving more into a resilience phase where we can prepare whole communities for the next disaster, because it'll come along. It feels like every summer the fires are unprecedented. Floods, same thing. So we're sort of there much more long term.
So you're looking to roll out the volunteer program for the floods in about 2 to 3 weeks or so.
So we're just waiting for confirmation, and then as soon as we have that, we can be sharing it. Far and wide, because the need's so great.
And that's something that we'd love to share in our community. Obviously, Property Development Australia, we've got reaches out to all the other different sort of property groups that are happening. So this is where, you know, this awareness of what we can do for those of us who might say financially, I don't have the capability, but if you can help with your hands and your legs and your mind, whatever that might be, that's another opportunity there. I think it's all about looking for the solutions and looking at how we can help. In terms of fundraising, obviously you guys will need help with that as well. Let's talk about the funds. I want to understand a little bit more, particularly after the bushfires. As you know, there was quite a bit of controversy as to how funds are being used. So can you tell us, like, you know, if you want to raise 100 grand, how does that get distributed and who does it go to?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, completely understand the questions around transparency, because, you know, in times of disaster, there is so much more focus on it. And I think that's where there's real opportunity for funds to get handed out either too quickly or too slowly, or so it is difficult. So the funds that we raise essentially go into supporting these volunteer days. So people can actually see the impact with their own two hands. They can get involved themselves. We don't give cash handouts, but it funds the equipment that we use. It funds the van to travel with the equipment to these locations. It essentially just lengthens the period that we can stay working in the community.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, we very much say that we provide a hand up, not a handout. So that's, you know, when I'm talking about working with communities, working with the property owners and listening, that's kind of the Habitat ethos. Yeah.
Understand. Right. So what would love appreciate sort of you sharing, you know, obviously what it is that you guys do, what are the potential ways that people can contribute. How can we, you know, those who are interested to do something at the moment, where do they need to go and how can they sort of donate or volunteer themselves at this stage?
Yeah, so our website is habitat.org.au. So donations can be made directly through there. However, I think what we could do is create a campaign just for the Property Development Australia community. So, you know, you can set a goal and work towards something together, and we can share, you know, we can share the impact of those funds. And you know, telling stories of property owners, and if people are getting out volunteering, we can share those stories as well. That's probably the best way.
So that's something that we're going to be looking at launching. Will be a fundraising effort as a community, along with Habitat for Humanity, as well as being able to get groups of volunteers who are specifically from our community, property community, to get out there and get, you know, for want of a better word, get your hands dirty. So that's the immediate efforts. That is something that we'll work on together. Dan, obviously, I've been speaking to you about that. So we'll get the ball rolling on that, and then as well, looking at what overseas opportunities there are to. I think this idea of being able to build homes with our own hands, someone else overseas who could have no other way of building, is incredible and incredibly rewarding as well, I'm sure.
It is so rewarding, yeah. As sort of unselfish as it is to travel and build for others, like sometimes it still feels selfish because it's so much fun. You feel great about yourself also. So that's so cool. Just for yourself, Dan, I mean, how long have you been part of the organisation? So I've been with Habitat for about 7 years. Mostly in fundraising, and now, you know, the local volunteering has grown so much. So I've been working with volunteering as well. It's it's a great place to work. It's really tangible, the impact that you can make. You know, it's great to have a purpose in a career. So I really love it.
Absolutely. And where has it taken you from a traveling perspective?
So I've done 5 global village builds overseas. So I've been to the south and central Vietnam, a pretty remote area in the mountains of Nepal. went to Cambodia with a large corporate team. So there was 150 senior partners of an accounting firm. Came to Cambodia and then Vietnam. So they were both incredible trips. They basically built a community in the space of 3.5 days. So that was huge. That was huge. And then Indonesia. So me and my schoolmates actually went to Indonesia rather than sort of our typical, Fiji, sit by the pool type holiday. We all went to Indonesia and built a house together. So yeah, I'm sort of not dragging, but taking my family and friends around the world with me, which I really miss a lot.
Yes.
Hopefully next year they'll be back. Yeah.
Yeah. So you, before we came on live, you mentioned that you're planning to have these global village programs starting from next year.
Yeah, it's looking like Fiji for Australian volunteers, that Fiji will be the location for 2023. And then from 2024, sort of pending COVID and restrictions, 2024 will open it up again to all of Asia Pacific. So that's really exciting. Yeah.
Fabulous. So, and just really quickly, how does it work? Do people, if they obviously fund their own flights and accommodation, like do you just sort of package it up and then, food and everything else? How does that work?
Yeah, so volunteers register, which cover they pay $100, $100, which covers insurance. They get a shirt, a hat. They get all the materials that they need to sort of prepare them for the trip. We ask them to fundraise an amount, which goes into the building of the home and the local community, which is great for us because it kind of serves as, it really builds awareness because all the volunteers are talking about where they're going, what they're doing. Yeah. And then we organise the accommodation, meals for the whole week. We always do a cultural activity before we start to really bond the team together. So, might be going to Angkor Wat in Cambodia or a cooking class in Vietnam. So that's always great. But we organise the whole itinerary, so you can really just focus on having a good time and building during the days. Yeah,
and so then people sort of fundraise for their flights or that sort of thing.
I mean, some do, but it's not tax deductible if it's covering your costs. So there's the donation, the fundraising, and then there's the costs, which are flights and
whether you want to self-fund that or fundraise it, that's up to you.
Yeah. Okay. But we help volunteers through that whole process, and usually they're signing up kind of 9 to 12 months before, so it's they just chip away at it.
And the minimum. Do you have a minimum and a maximum age for volunteers to be able to take part?
Yeah, so the minimum's 15. So that's for projects overseas and in Australia. 15, there's no maximum really. So we've had, people in their early 80s even turn up. There really is a job for everyone. So it could be as simple as keeping up morale and handing around water, or, laying bricks or getting in there with a shovel or whatever it is.
Yes. Amazing. Yeah. It would be so cool if we could get a whole lot of people from the community, Property Development of Australia, to help towards the Fiji trip, because I'm sure lots of people are looking forward to going somewhere. But doing something with purpose, like traveling with purpose. And we talk about, profit for purpose as well, which I think, again, as much as your focus is on building shelter, I mean, our focus is on building homes, and your focus is as well building homes, but there's shelter there. There's an innate need there to just house families. So well done for what you guys are doing. And I'm really looking forward to really supporting what it is that your mission is. And for the rest of our community to be able to give back as well. So looking forward to that.
Definitely. Yeah, and thanks so much for reaching out and having me here today. I'll just say, so if there is anyone, I was just going to mention that. So if there is anyone interested in helping out with flood recovery or the bushfire work, they can email volunteer@habitat.org.au. And as soon as those flood activities begin, we'll be letting everyone know the available dates and just next steps. But it's pretty simple. You just register, do a very quick safety induction, 10-minute thing, and then join us on the day.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. So anyone that wants to find out a little bit more, reach out to Dan as well. We are planning, as part of the Property Development Australia community, some events, and also being part of these volunteer programs that are going to be happening in about 3 weeks or so. If you're keen to do that, put your name in the comments, or reach out to Dan, or reach out, volunteer at @AU, and love to see some of our faces out there helping the community. Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much for your time and sharing. Love what it is that you guys do, and I'm looking forward to really partnering up and building a strong sort of partnership in what you guys do and how we can contribute as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, we can't do it without communities like yours. So yeah, thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, you take care of yourself. Stay dry, everyone. Take care. Keep well. And we'll see you again next week for the business of property. But this today was a special little occasion. We've been looking for a community and charitable partner to partner up with as part of Property Development Australia, and I'm really excited that that's Habitat for Humanity as well. So take care, keep well, and we'll see you again. Bye bye.